Hello, everyone. If you're like me, you enjoy fantasy games. And in those fantasy games, you've probably noticed that there's three major stereotypes, major archetypes, major classes that no matter what game you're playing, these are the types of characters that you can play. First up, the mage. From the mighty wizard casting lightning and fire and ice and destroying everything in his path, to the priest healing his friends, calling upon the light of the gods to implement morality and keep the warriors in the party alive, to the druid that just straight up turns into a giant bear and mauls you to death because you've miffed him slightly, probably stepped on a bug or something. Mages are invariably the strongest class no matter what game you're in, almost every time. And that makes sense, if your first reaction to a fight breaking out is to just incinerate everything in the nearby vicinity, yeah, you can take the top spot. I'm not going to argue with you on that one. The way that this is balanced is usually by making them kind of physically weak compared to the other classes. They're squishy, not that tough if you get in melee, and so, they have a lot of control, a lot of damage, but as soon as that control fails, they kind of don't have the option to get out of a bad situation. They can't really recover. After that is the rogue, master of escapes, skulking through caves, picking locks, disarming traps, sneaking up on enemies, and butt-stabbing them to death before the fight even breaks out, just to make sure that the result is the best it can be for themselves and the party. Now, these guys have the most amount of recovery options, whether it be by just being in the back with a bow, just pew, 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 annoying the shit out of fucking everything because they're little pieces of shit, or just, sneaking up on you, dealing a ton of damage, and trying to end that fight before it really gets started. Because as soon as the fight actually starts, they kind of have to, hide behind somebody tougher than them, because they're little rats. That someone tougher is the warrior. From naked berserkers to full-plated armored behemoths, from dual-wielding to sword and shield to a two-handed warhammer, warriors are iconic for how tough they are. And yet, it feels as though in a lot of games, there is a concerted effort to not let warriors get their time to shine. I was recently playing Dark Souls 2. Check that out on twitch.tv/antikill_. And I'm doing this challenge that I've been doing for the past couple months, where I am playing through Dark Souls, all the Dark Souls, without rolling. Now, in Dark Souls 1, this was a lot of fun. Initially, I was pretty squishy, but eventually I got my hands on a big weapon that I could push back enemies with, and I got some heavy armor that I could take some hits with, and by the end of it, I was as tough as a lot of the bosses. And I even played through all the way into NG+, not on stream, just on my own time, and yeah, it holds up. Might not hold up on NG+ 7, but it holds up in NG+. Which, in my opinion, is the hard mode difficulty that the game is still balanced around. Anything above that, I'm not going to blame the game for being ultra punishing for getting hit. But before that, I will. Dark Souls 2 and many other games like it make it impossible for a player to be tough enough to just take more than just 2 or 3 hits from an enemy before falling over dead. And there's an actual artificial hindering of physical damage reduction. Now, why the hell do I say that this is artificial and not just how the game works, right? You see, in the game, elemental resistance works differently from physical resistance. Whatever number you have for your resistance, so, think of a number in your head, like 874. It's a pretty big number, yeah. You divide that by 1,000, and that is the percentage of damage that you can ignore. So if you have 874 elemental resistance for, let's say, fire, you reduce all the fire damage you take by 87.4%. That's pretty big. That's really good. If you're fighting a fire-based enemy, you can take a lot of their attacks, and you'll be fine for the most part. Unfortunately, the same isn't true for physical damage. For whatever reason, they decided that whatever number you have for physical resistance is going to give you maybe a tenth of the effectiveness that it would have given you if you were, in fact, using that for elemental resistances. What is the point of this? It's made even worse by the fact that in order to have so much physical damage resistance, you actually have to wear extremely heavy armor, which hinders you significantly. It slows your animations, it increases the amount of stamina consumed by your actions, and it decreases the amount of stamina that you recover, essentially punishing you for wearing heavy armor while giving you no reward. So my question to that is, why is it in the game? Now, I'm sure you're thinking, well, I'm sure that you can at least expect a good result from heavy weapons. And you'd be right. Except you're not. You see, in Dark Souls, each weapon has a scaling attack rating, which increases based on your character's attributes. The formula for this is based on a baseline damage plus an amount decided on based on your stats and the scaling of the weapon. So, now you might be thinking, oh, well, the large club has an S scaling in strength. So that's going to hit really hard, right? And you'd be right again. Except you're not. Again. You idiot. You dumb little goofy goober. Why would you think that? You see, the large club in question, despite its weight, despite how unwieldy it is, despite how slow it is to recover after a heavy attack, does not deal that much more damage than, let's say, a katana with a similar scaling for dexterity, or a curved sword, or even a dagger with the right improvements, or a straight sword. And in fact, most weapons in the game require some amount of dexterity scaling, so you can't even really focus all the way into strength, but you can focus all the way into dexterity for a lot of things, which is kind of annoying to me. Regardless, that's a conversation for a different time. Actually, no, the conversation is for this, but I don't really want to talk about it. I've talked about it so many times. It really annoys me. I really don't like how the weapons are in that goddamn game, but regardless, I've talked about Dark Souls 2 enough, and you're probably wondering, where does this actually relate to the warrior, rogue, and mage discussion? This isn't the first game I've witnessed this in. It's not the last either. Most fantasy-based RPGs I've played throughout my life, I immediately pick the warrior. I like the warrior. It's the fantasy that I like the most. I like the idea of putting on a suit of armor and going up against monsters, ghouls, mages, with nothing but my grit, training, a sword, and a shield, and being able to beat them by my skill at arms and my grit and my durability and my determination. Unfortunately, my hope that I won't be punished for this choice is usually dashed into the rocks of every enemy ignoring my attacks just to punch me in the face for way more damage and my armor being made of paper. From Fable to Diablo to most Souls games to Dragon's Dogma and even older editions of D&D and many others, the archetypal warrior wearing heavy armor and a great weapon is at such a disadvantage by virtue of having to face off against these giant beasts while having nothing to differentiate himself from the other classes, because he just stands there and fights, which the other classes can also do. To play a barbarian in Diablo 2 is to know what it's like to be weaker than your peers. You're just a paladin without the abilities. To play a tank in a Souls-like is to know what it's like to be punished for using the options given to you by the game, because you have the same durability as, say, somebody who is wearing light armor and just dodging around. Except you're not doing that. You're trying to stand your ground, take the hits, and give them back because you've got heavy armor, so you're slower on the roll, right? To be a warrior in Dragon's Dogma is to have to sit back and wait for the boss to deign to let you hit them, because you don't have that many options to get at the enemy when he's flying around, or when he's, running away from you and throwing abilities at you, or breathing on you, or just standing up really high, and every time you try to climb him, he just grabs you and throws you away. And it's like, I get that, but I should have some ability to stop him from doing that, right? If I got this big-ass warhammer in my hand, or big sword. To be a fighter in Pathfinder, or Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, or 3rd edition, just as bad, honestly, if not worse, is kind of to just hope for a merciful DM that won't punish you every fight for not being able to use magic, or to at least give you some opportunities to shine where the mages wouldn't. Like, use some anti-magic here and there. It's a little important when everyone has magic, right? And in every single one of these cases, other classes have free reign of the warrior's abilities, wielding whatever weapon they want a lot of the times at the same effectiveness as you, or, higher. For example, Dragon's Dogma. Oh, hey, look, it's the Strider, the rogue class. Yeah, he just climbed the enemy, stabbed him in the eye a bunch of times, and outdamaged the warrior with the giant sword. Great. That feels awesome for me as a warrior, right? Why should I play as a warrior when the mage can just cast a spell and at no cost to themselves, boom, they're a warrior now, at least until they feel like being a mage again? Why should I play as a warrior when I could just be a rogue, deal as much damage, and avoid the attacks rather than getting hit by them? Since the warrior's armor is made of paper anyway, it doesn't actually protect him. He just doesn't have the option to get out of the way. He has to hope that, hey, the shield will block it, except that costs stamina. So now the shield is out of the way, I'm completely open, and the monster's gonna enter my fucking urethra. What reason do I have for playing a warrior make the investment of wearing an expensive suit of armor if it's not going to protect me any more than the mage's robes or the rogue's leather? It's extremely frustrating, and it feels like a lot of games are afraid to commit to the weaknesses of the classes unless it's the warrior. As a warrior, I don't have a lot of ranged options, and I'm not that flexible. I can't get past traps, I can't get past locked doors, I don't have that many abilities to deal with like 20 to 30 enemies at once. The mage does that for me. So now when the mage is up against a single tough enemy that is able to survive that initial blast and break the mage's control, why does the mage have an option to deal with that? Why can he just cast a spell, and this spell is dedicated to you, single guy, and then you fight him directly? You just cast a spell, and now you're as tough as the warrior, and you can handle that fight. Why does the rogue get to fight in the melee like he's a warrior by just dodging around attacks and doing all of the stuff that a warrior should be doing, as well as his other things? The warrior doesn't get this crutch that the other classes get. Instead, we're just stuck suffering. We're just stuck hoping that this time the game dev doesn't go out of its way to make our gameplay experience worse. The game gives you an option, and in that case it's like 3 or 4 choices, and then one of the choices is a trap. And you're going to be punished for it for no reason, even though the warrior is, in almost all cases, the most popular archetype that most people recognize as, oh, this is the simple class option that I should play as if this is my first time playing, and yet it's the hardest class to make work, and it's the most punishing one, no matter what you do. Why should I or anyone else want to engage with that? Why? Why should I be made to suffer just because I wanted to play this game this way? Why do games insist on giving you a massive shield, saying that, oh, this is a great shield, it's going to protect you really well, and then you put it up against the giant monster, and the giant monster knocks it out of the way like it's nothing? How can you explain that a massive warhammer that I just swung at a creature's head doesn't stagger them? Why is the guy that's running around with just 2 little pig stickers dealing more damage than me when I have a sword the size of a person that I swing and it looks like it should cut something in half in one swing, and that it does nothing to them? Take Dragon Age, for example, right? When I first played Dragon Age Origins, I played as a warrior. I went two-handed because I love two-handed weapons, right? I'm sure you realized already, right? And eventually I got my hands on the Chasind Great Maul. That's the best two-handed weapon in the game. It's this big warhammer, deals a lot of damage, gives a lot of stamina, so I can do a lot of abilities and hit a lot and do all that stuff. And I stuck with that the rest of the game because it's the best weapon. And running through fights wearing heavy armor, using this big hammer, just wading through enemies, being virtually impervious to their attacks, just cutting things down like it's nothing. It was awesome. And eventually we get to this big fight. This big monster is just as tough as me, hits just as hard as me, and we have a confrontation on an equal level because I am a warrior and that's what I do. And then Dragon Age 2 comes out, and all of the warrior's abilities to deal damage are gone with the fucking wind. Now you either play a rogue if you want to deal damage, or you play a mage if you want to do things. The warrior's job in Dragon Age 2 is just to sit there, have no agency, and get beat up by everything. And then Inquisition was a little bit better, but Veilguard, the first mechanic you're introduced to is throwing a magical shield which comes back. And all of your other abilities are the exact same. Everything you do is magical. You summon a giant hammer and you crash it on an enemy with it. You summon a giant grappling hook, throw it, and it comes back, and it's magical. It's glowing. Woo! You fucking clap your hands, and a catapult comes down. You clap your ass cheeks, and a fucking arrow barrage comes down. You conjure an overshield, or you conjure a scythe, and you cut enemies with it, and it heals you. And I'm sorry, but that's not a warrior. That's a mage. That's not what I want to play as when I want to play as a warrior. It feels like that game and a lot of other games were made by mage players. And I say that in the most derogatory way possible. Because what the hell are we going to be when every single game out there is made for mages? Will we even be men still? Or will we just have to be archers? Ugh. I hope not. But that's kind of all I have to say about this. At least From Software, king of the Souls-likes, right? They've kind of started implementing mechanics so that you can, in fact, be a strong, physical guy who's just standing there and taking hits and giving them back, right? Like, they've been doing that with more recent games, and it's a lot of fun to play as those. But I'm done talking further about this for today. If you guys enjoyed that, drop a like, subscribe, comment how much you hate mages. I will favorite all of the comments shit-talking mages. But, with all that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Cheers.